Thank
This
you.
conference will now be recorded.
You are being recorded.
You want to start again so you're on the record?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Well, everybody, welcome. This is, I believe, is our second meeting online, and I'd like to thank Danielle. Danielle has been fundamental at allowing us to do these meetings. Thank you, Danielle. You rock. I know many of you. We have been talking through the Slack, and I just want to do a little FYSA. It's where we are now as a group. As of today, the 28th. So the meetings obviously will continue online. We don't know when this will solve or will relent. When that happens, we obviously will make an assessment. Everybody knows the conference has been canceled. We decided to cancel it, and then like 2 days later, the library pretty much told us, yeah, we're canceling everything. So it was not going to happen, unfortunately. So we'll pick up on that once we pass this. You can volunteer your presentations. You can email us at info@hackmiami.org. I'm getting a lot of good people sending me offers for present. Absolutely, we'll put you up. And I'm working on some content in the following meetings. If we can get 2 or 3 presentations, by all means, we can do it. It's up to you. As of now, we're gonna keep the schedule unless I start getting enough to say, okay, we have enough, so we can spread it out and have the most content that we can. For those who are watching this and are not at the Slack, you're missing out. You can email us at info@hackmiami.org, and we will send you an invite to the Slack channel. In the Slack channel, we have several things that are very important. One of them is the current disaster channel, where we're talking about the current chatter intelligence that's happening in regards to the COVID-19 and the industry. We get a lot of job postings. If you are affected by the current crisis, where I know it's too early yet, but I've been hearing that there's been layoffs already, and some people have been let go. Please join the job offers channel, join the Slack, and we can certainly try to help you, try to find a job and place you as soon as possible. So that's important. Hit us up at the email address, and we'll do our best. Most of you, I believe most of you are above anybody in intelligence. So this goes to say, don't stay home. We've been getting reports that the people are still out, and the longer the people stay out, the worse this will get. So please stay home and check out the meetups. We have people from the West Coast and we have people from the East Coast. So Hack Miami obviously is championing the East Coast. We might start mixing them up at one point. I just want to make sure we spread out the content, so we keep in touch with each other every 2 weeks or so. We do have a number of meetings that are coming up in Hack Miami, and then a number of meetings that are coming up with Pacific Hackers. You can follow the main Twitter account, which is Hack Miami. I truly thank you very much for attending this and keeping on going. We depend on everybody for this, including our group. If you have content that you want to present, by all means. Those who have had experience with this type of events, I welcome any type of input or experience. Like we done it in the last conference, for example, we had a how to survive a hurricane, and there were some great tips about how to deal with lack of power and many other things that are related to that type of situation. I'm sure we can probably find somebody that can give us some tips of how to cope with this type of crisis, although it looks like it's pretty much new for everybody. With this in mind, today we're gonna talk about drone security. And I'd like to thank Henry. So
Rod, I think you're cutting out. I think you are inviting Henry. Yes?
should I?
No, I got it. You were cutting out, so I just want to make sure you were
Oh, I'm
ready.
sorry. Yeah, I'll give it to you so you can introduce him.
Wonderful. All right, Henry, you're ready to rock and roll. I'm going to make your PC the presenter. Is that okay?
Okay, perfect.
All right, you are going to get a make presenter. Poof, you are the presenter. You're on a Mac or a PC?
PC. I switched, so
There you go. You're all set, sweetie. Thank you. Let me know if you need anything.
awesome, perfect. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about some introductory to drone security. We're going to cover three main areas, which are defending from drones. That is why there was a rise in needing to defend from drones. Some cool projects in which people use drones to hack other drones, and then a couple of tips on what you can do to harden your devices. So let's start with the need from protecting from drones. Basically comes from there's already a bunch of crazy ideas. Some of them might look fun, like shooting fireworks on an airsoft gun from it, but you can see how this could be easily weaponized in a worse way, and why authorities are worried about what basically a lot of people consider just toys. So there have been other situations in which people, in this case protesters, had a police drone flying above them, and they had this really powerful green lasers, just all of them pointing them at the bottom part of it. They made it either force it to land or crash. People are not actually sure. At the end, I'm going to leave a bunch of references. You can read the article over there and the different theories of why the drone came down. The most common thing you're going to see out there are drone guns. They're pretty expensive, and I'm going to show you basically the different components that they have. And in reality, they could be a lot cheaper, but they sell, for example, for 10 grand or even more. But they basically cover the most common frequencies, 2.4 gigahertz for the remote control, 5.8 for the video, and GPS, GLONASS, and other global positioning systems. The other type of gun is not that common. It basically just shoots a net. But this is the most common type, and it basically has the following components. Something to work the GPS. You can get an SDR, either a cheap one, like the Nuelec, which actually reaches a little bit above what you need for the GPS, so that should work. If not, the HackRF should be all that you need. These devices would allow you to not also jam the signal, but also spoof the signal. But in many cases, if you manage to interrupt the GPS communication on a drone, you will force it to land on the location where it is. So maybe just GPS jammer, which a lot, for legal reasons, a lot of people are selling them as GPS signal generators, and those are super cheap. So next, for a lot of drones use just regular Wi-Fi to communicate. So many of you might already know that there's a bunch of different options for that, depending on the type of antenna. It's recommended to choose, if you saw in the drone gun, it was basically a Yagi antenna, like the bottom left one that you see there. That is basically what it uses, a directional antenna to jam the signal. You can get a cheaper one, like the alpha panel antenna. Or there's people that have even done a cantenna, basically using a can to create a directional antenna. In one of the references, you're going to see a project that basically uses exactly that to take down the drone. And for the transmitter, of course, you just get a Wi-Fi card, or again, you can actually also use the HackRF. And finally, for video, again, the HackRF, or basically you can just get a powerful FPV video transmitter and make it hop through the different channels. And there's also super expensive 5.8 gigahertz jammers that you can get. And all of these devices basically are the different components that you would see in an actual drone gun. That jammer on the bottom right has actually been used in prisons because people have used drones to try to carry smuggle stuff into the prisons and have been using drones in order to do that. Now, let's talk about hacking a drone with another drone. Basically, from the different products that I showed you, the components that would make a drone gun are pretty much the same components that you can put on top of a drone and just hack away other drones with just that. It would be pretty, well, not pretty cheap, but it would be rather accessible. A lot of these things are open source, and you're gonna see later on, we're gonna talk a little bit about commercial drones versus DEI drones. And of course, a DEI drone, the one that you make yourself with open source parts, is gonna be super easy to customize. You'll be able to add a bunch of different sensors and components. But of course, the cons to that it will be that it's super time consuming, and a lot of the mods require some advanced knowledge. And because of there's many different options in both open source software and hardware, you might find a tutorial or someone did a little bit of research on something, but it doesn't quite apply to the particular device that you have. So going the DEI way, it's gonna be it's gonna give you a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, you're gonna be fixing and doing a bunch of fidgeting around trying to figure out how to get it to the next step. On the other hand, you can get a commercial drone. A lot of them are, people have invested a lot of time of them. There's a particular drone, the Parrot AR Drone 2.0. That one, a lot of people have done mods on it. So for a commercial drone, it's super easy to mod. And there's plenty of resources online because a lot of people have been working on this particular model. The cons would be that they have limited amount of sensors. Basically, this model in particular doesn't come with a GPS. You can buy that one, but that's basically it. And if you want to start adding like more hacking elements, like a Raspberry Pi or something, it has a limited payload carry weight versus doing your own drone. You'll basically be able to make it carry whatever. This one will only be able to carry like a small Raspberry Pi and a battery, and that's it. So there's also a bunch of tools and projects for both attacking and defending your drones. Now we're going to talk about attacking other drones, and you're going to see that for Parrot and DJI, which are two of the major commercial drone makers. There's a lot of tools to attack those two vendors. So Skyjack is a very common project. When you Google drone hacking, and this is one of the first things that is going to come out. It uses the drone that I just showed you to hack other drones just like it and try to remote control them. And there's a bunch of other projects similar to that one that try to do the same thing. So you're going to find a bunch of information out there. For DJI, there's also a bunch of information out there. There's a lot of people doing reverse engineering. So you'll be able to get into a lot of the commercial drones in a way that wouldn't be normally possible compared to a DEI drone in which everything is open source. We're going to see a little bit more about that next. But there's also generic attacks. So Icarus, for example, attacks the DSMX protocol, which is the common protocol that you are going to find in remote controllers, transmitters, everything that you use to actually control the drone other than Wi-Fi. They use very similar frequencies, not exactly the same, but they have a different protocols, they use different modulation. But in particular, because the DSMX protocol is the most common one, you'll be able to find what you normally call like a breakout board that you can hook up to your Raspberry Pi and just do the same thing, attach it to the drone, be able to hack other drones that use this very common protocol. And of course, we were talking about GPS jamming, but also we mentioned GPS spoofing, which is something that has been used in order to try to make the drone travel in a different direction, try to make it force where it is, stuff like that. Now, for hardening drones, and this is where we split a little bit because it will be very different for commercial and open source drones. Of course, the DEI open source path will be easier to modify. You can just get an actual radio controller that you can flash the firmware with open source software. Same for the flight controller, the receiver, everything else. So all of that you'll be able to manipulate freely versus the commercial drones, which, like we already mentioned, there's limited options on what you can do. For some models, a lot of people have been working on them and they have shared what they have been working on. For other models, you won't be able to find much information. But in general, and in both cases, you're going to have limited options that don't include hardware mods. So that is modifying something in the drone itself. For many cases, it won't be just plug and play. Now, for commercial drones, like I said, there's not much that you can do. Basically, just keeping the firmware updated. As you saw for DJI and Parrot, there's a lot of hacks going out. So the vendors are actually trying to get on top of things, updating their firmware, protecting from these vulnerabilities, and making the files available for the customers to download and reflash the firmware. They don't seem to have any type of auto update feature, which would be nice. But in many cases, you'll just be able to put the image on the SD card and just turn on the drone and it will update on itself. Now, as we saw, a lot of them come with Wi-Fi, either to just share video, to change configurations, to actually fly it entirely, stuff like that. And in a lot of cases, they don't come with Wi-Fi encryption enabled. So if there's an option, if it comes with an app that lets you modify that, you should try to add a password, make it encrypted, make it secure. And you can also, in some models, disable pairing with more than one device at a time would be a great idea. So somebody else won't be able to try to wiggle you away. They just won't be able to connect if you change that setting. I believe it was available in DJI that you can put the amount of people that can connect to the drone. And yeah, you can modify it in a way that only you'll be able to connect. Now, for the commercial drones, like we said, if you connect over Wi-Fi, there's going to be a couple of services enabled. You're going to have FTP to share the videos. Whatever was recorded by the drone, you can download it over Wi-Fi through FTP. And you're going to have Telnet. Now, if Telnet is enabled, in a lot of cases, you'll be able to connect without credentials. Some cases, you're going to get a limited account. In other cases, you're going to get root. And you'll be able to modify the subsystem that it has. It actually is just BusyBox. So you'll be able to just modify whatever you need in order to make it safer. Just make sure that you have a backup of the drone's firmware, just in case you make any mistakes, you'll be able to recover it. Now, because of this type of attacks, people had already identified that Telnet was vulnerable. So some vendors decided to add a password in order to try to protect what you were able to do if you were in that Wi-Fi, in the drone's Wi-Fi. But a lot of them have a smartphone app that you can download, you open it up, and you can change the settings. And it never really asks you for any type of credentials. So the thing is that for a lot of vendors, they use the same credentials for all drones. Even DJI did it, and a lot of the smaller vendors also do it. So what you can do is just connect to the Wi-Fi, open up the smartphone app, and sniff the communication when you connect to the drone using Wireshark, and you're going to see the credentials just flying through. And you can use that same credentials to log into Telnet in the drone and do what I just suggested. You can modify stuff, be able to harden your drone just like basically any other Linux system. Again, just make sure that you have a backup for it. Now, for DEI drones, there's of course a lot more options. You'll be able to just add whatever you need to add and modify the source code in whichever way you need to modify it. Now, of course, there's a couple of things that you have to do that are just like for commercial drones. That is, disable pairing with more than one device at a time, and keep firmware and related software updated. Basically, those two, just like for commercial drones, you need to keep everything updated. But of course, you have the option to modify the source code as needed. That means that you'll be able to play around, change settings, test how it goes. If it doesn't work, you just download the clean software again. There's a lot more that you can do, and you can add more flight sensors. So as we saw, there's a bunch of different type of attacks that basically are limited. The most common attacks are limited to just GPS, which is used for the altitude and fixed position. Now, for both altitude and fixed position, there are other sensors that you can add that will complement what the GPS is seeing. So if the GPS goes out, you still have other sensors that can be used in order to determine, okay, this is my position, this is my altitude. So it doesn't really rely just on GPS in order to do that. For the altimeters, we saw that laser maybe is not such a good idea. Basically, you put a small laser rangefinder on the bottom of the drone, and it uses that to determine the altitude. But people have the theory that the drone that we saw the protesters take down was because it probably had a laser sensor on the bottom. But ultrasonic mixed with barometric sensors would actually be a great idea for a drone, because the ultrasonic has a shorter range and the barometric doesn't really work great on shorter range, but it works great on larger ranges. So using those two will be a great way to complement the GPS in order to try to determine part of the position that it needs. And for the fixed position, a very common solution is called optical flow tracking, which is basically just putting a camera, taking a picture of what the camera sees, and then taking a picture just in a very short time frame, and comparing the images and seeing if the drone is drifting in any particular direction and try to correct it. In theory, there are attacks against this type of sensors. In one case in particular, for example, the Parrot AR drone that we talked about earlier, that one uses that to try to get the fixed position if you don't have the GPS module. And some people found out that if you point a really bright laser on the floor, apparently the drone uses that laser to try to fix it, as that's the fixed position. So it's going to use that dot. You leave it like really, you try not to move the laser dot right below the drone. The drone uses that dot to determine, okay, this is what I'm going to use so I don't drift away. And then you start slowly moving the laser and the drone will follow it. Of course, if you have an open source solution, modifying the code so it doesn't rely on just one point would be a good approach. And there's actually some research done on it that you're going to see also in the references. Now, for backup and recovery channels, that is, other types of communication are actually used to control the drone. What will happen if you lose connection on one of those? Well, one of the elements that that I commonly saw when I was doing the research was people just using a cell phone in order to communicate with it. Actually, you can just buy GSM or 3G breakout board. You put a SIM card, you connect it to a Raspberry Pi, to an Arduino or whatever. And a lot of people were using it as a recovery method. That is, you lost your drone, you can basically just send a text and it will reply back with a GPS location, or actually using it to control it, because it's not as fast as using an actual transmitter, remote controller. But because the drone, if it already has a bunch of sensors like GPS, and it has barometric pressure sensor and optical flow tracking, it probably doesn't need to rely on immediate controls right away. So that was probably a partial option, but a most common option, or actually not more common, but definitely sounds like a better idea, would be to use just another method of communication. LoRa, which stands for long range, is actually a very tiny device like the one you see on the right. It's the one with the antenna. And it uses very little energy, which is perfect for a drone. It has long range. I mean, it was designed with that objective, and that's how it got the name. And you can see that the model is actually super tiny. So using that as a main communication channel would be a viable option. It doesn't have transfer rates that would allow you to send video or stuff like that, but at least for the remote control, it would be definitely enough. It's a way lower frequency than the common 2.7 gigahertz. That actually means that it's going to have better, as it is a longer wavelength, it will be easier for it to go through walls and stuff like that, unlike Wi-Fi. So it should theoretically have a lot better reception in areas in which you have a lot of constructions and stuff like that, a lot of buildings. So that would be a better alternative, and none of the drone guns that you're going to see on the market aim for this kind of frequency or devices. So that would be just one of the many options that you have to use either backup recovery channels or actually a device like that as your main communication channel. Now for video, as you may know, basically a drone will have a video transmitter. You'll be able to choose a channel, and then the receiver, you do the same. You select the channel and it's going to see the image, but it doesn't have any type of encryption, any type of security. Basically, even people, so drones normally use the same frequencies as baby monitors. So anybody that has a baby monitor receiver will be able to see what your drone sees if you're not using some type of encoder. I saw a vendor that sells the ones on the bottom center. They call it scramblers, but don't actually work as scramblers. Apparently, they're just encoders. But adding that, so on one end, you add it in between the camera and the transmitter, and the other one, you put it in between the receiver and the screen in which you see the video feed. And that will mean that anybody who tries to read the communication on the air will see just garbage on the screen instead of what the drone is actually seeing. And a little summary on the references. I put the 3 top videos at the top so you have an idea of what people have been doing with drones and why there's a lot of other people worried about drones and invested in drone security. The Fireworks drone, there's the Instagram link for...
Henry?
Yeah.
You cut out just a little bit there. Can you start over on this slide, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
So a bit of a summary on the references. I put the 3 first links are basically the several different reasons why people have been getting worried about drones, the stuff that has been going out. We didn't talk about other more worrisome stuff. I don't know if anybody knows that drones have already been, commercial drones, just like the DJI, have been used to drop bombs and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons why people are getting worried. There's a lot of people that claim that these videos, like the fireworks drone or the airsoft drone, are really cool ideas. And I actually, in a way, I agree. I think they're cool ideas, but they're easy to take in the wrong direction. And then there's a lot of links on the bottom that I just put them all together. There's basically a lot of different projects, articles, a lot of extra information, some of it that you saw on the presentation regarding drone hacking, um, defending from other drones, how to do certain attacks like the GPS spoofing attacks and other similar elements that you'll be able to see, either projects that you can do yourself or ideas that you can follow. There's an article about people that modify their drones and which are better to be modified. So I hope that you get some extra information from those links. And that will be it. If you have any questions, that will be the perfect moment.
Harry, I have a question. If you wanted to get started on flying drones outdoor, which one would you buy?
For outdoors, I would buy basically any GPS assisted drone. Those will be the easiest if you're flying outdoors. If you're flying indoors, there's a lot of them that have like special protection around the props or sensors to avoid collision. But if you're flying outside and you have the ability to use GPS, that's probably going to be the easiest and the cheapest option. In many cases, you can get a drone super cheap. Like I just got one for $140, and it has a bunch of GPS functions. It has assisted takeoff and landing. It can follow you around. You can set waypoints on a map, and it will follow those, stuff like that. So for outdoor flying, you can get a super cheap drone that has basically GPS assisted flying, or just any of the fancy GPS options that I just mentioned. And if you want to take it a step further, you can check that they have additional sensors. So you'll be able to make sure, like I just said, a lot of them are going to have a camera or a laser underneath that is used for assisted takeoff and landing, or to try to avoid drifting when you're flying with strong airs, strong winds. So any of those options, you can get it for $200, $300. If you look for, you can just go to Amazon, look around the $200 range, and all of them are going to have the options I just mentioned. Of course, you can always invest a little bit more and go with one of the major vendors, but they're basically going to have pretty much the same functions, maybe a couple more. DJI implemented something that is really cool, which is called geofencing. And what it does is the drone already knows where it's not supposed to fly, like into an airport or something. So you won't be able to accidentally drift off into that location. So that basically takes a huge headache away. You don't have to worry so much about what if I'm flying in an area if I shouldn't. Well, as long as it's not private property, the drone through geofencing will not go into anything that it's more dangerous or the private property. So basically, you only need to not fly above other people, and then the drone will take care about not accidentally getting into an airport or whatever. But anything within that range will work wonders for what you want to do, just flying outdoors.
Henry, a question for you. Hello.
Yep.
Yeah. What are the major protocols used in the drone? You have mentioned like a GPS, a LoRa kind of thing. Are there any other customized protocols which is supporting for the based on the channels level, and also the what kind of a frequency majority of the drones are using? Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that? Yeah.
Let me go back a bit. So if you see one of the last, third to the last one. So he said, and Icarus is the one that attacks the DSMX protocol, which is the most common protocol that works on 2.4 gigahertz. So
Okay.
the two options that you have if you want to attack this type of protocols, you won't be able to use a Wi-Fi card, a regular Wi-Fi card, because basically the whole protocol, the whole modulation is different. But you can use either the HackRF SDR, which will allow you to tune into this frequency and then basically demodulate everything that the DSMX protocol is sending. Or since that particular protocol is the most common one, you'll be able to find hardware that you can hook up to an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi or any other microcomputer, and you can program it to do whatever it is that you want. It could be, normally they use key pairs so that you won't be able to inject your own code, but those key pairs are super easy to brute force. So if you see in the references about Icarus, there's a paper that, it's not actually a paper, it's just an article. It talks a little bit about how they came about hacking that particular protocol. But other transmitters might use any of the other protocols that you see down there, like DSM2, M-Link, FHSS, and any of the other ones. So you're going to have different options, but at least DSMX is the most common one. So it should be the easiest one to target.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Henry.
I have another question, Henry. There is a lot of if you go Googling, for people that wants to get started on this, there's a bunch of courses in the range of $1,000, $1,500, and then they claim that they certify you as a pilot and a bunch of other stuff. Is that worth it or not? What's your opinion on that?
So particular for the US, there's a couple of things that will become important or an issue. Right now, you don't actually need a pilot license to fly, but the FCC and the FAA, so basically everything regarding wireless transmissions and everything regarding flying objects is getting heavily regulated. So at the very least, right now, you do need a pilot license for certain cases. For example, if you're gonna fly above people, like in a big event, and you wanna record that event, you do need a pilot license for that. But definitely it seems like they're trying to regulate this a lot more. It could happen that eventually everybody will need a pilot license for basically any type of flying. But so right now, you don't actually need it. I have heard very good reviews on a couple of basically these pilot classes. So I think they might be worth it, but I haven't tried it myself, and I haven't done the research enough to actually recommend anything in particular. But I definitely can say that I've heard a lot of good things about them. But as of right now, it's not strictly necessary.
But it's worth paying for it?
It seems that it is. I've heard from a lot of people that it seems that it is. So if you want, I can ask them in particular which one they recommend, and I can share the links through Slack.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other?
Henry,
Yeah.
one last question. Actually, are you will you share these PPTs to our respective emails, or how it is?
Yeah, I can share it whichever way you guys prefer. Normally, what I do is just find whatever free file sharing service there is. I upload it and then put the link on Slack.
Okay, sure, sure.
Perfect. Any other questions?
I do see one in the Slack channel, somebody asked, I think Mac asked, which drone did you buy for 140 bucks that has GPS?
Oh, let me see if I can find the link. But it's called, the brand, the maker is called Snaptime.
Nap time? Okay.
Snaptime. It's like captain, but with snap on the front.
Uh-huh.
And damn it, I can remember the model.
It's all right. When you track it down, we can throw it into Slack if you want to answer Mac's question.
Perfect. Check Slack.
All right, any other questions for Henry? Rod, did you want to circle back? Natalie posted a link in chat. So.
No, well, thank you very much. And we'll be posting the video of this and the slides soon. And thanks again, Danielle. Against those who came out late, if you send us an email to hackmiami.org, info@hackmiami.org, I'll be able to join you into the Slack channel, and then we can continue the conversation until we meet again.
All right, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.